So to answer your question about the film, I would say that the situation in Canada is more or less like it is in the United States. So we have an increasing number of cases, and since 2009, we're up to more than 17,000 cases of human Lyme disease in Canada. And we have to remember that these are all underestimates. So when I first started working with Jim, public health laughed at us, but we're now becoming mainstream. So many family doctors right now just feel caught. They know their patients are sick. They seriously suspect that they have Lyme disease, but they're being discouraged from actually giving the diagnosis because they don't have a positive blood test. So this makes it very, very frustrating for the family doctors who are trying to help their patients. So sometimes the patients still have to go to the US or Europe to get treatment, and we know that has to change. One of the things we recognize is that there is a bias towards the status quo. And we know that change is uncomfortable, but in this case, it really is necessary. So as Dr. Donta said in the film, the people writing the guidelines wouldn't even accept the idea that when there are these cases that are not responding to the rigid guidelines, it really comes down to the physician using their best professional judgment. So I think one of the best ways to deal with this bias against this, bias for the status quo is just to admit that it exists. So at CanLyme, we're really looking for a fundamental change. And the fundamental change has to be backed up by science, because that's the only thing that's going to last in the long term. And then we all personally have been involved with the problems of getting this diagnosis. And 3 of the submitted questions, so thank you very much, Jill, thank you, Logan, and thank you, Tracy, can be summed up in Jill's question, which is basically, where is the hope? And her son is still sick, and she doesn't want him just to remain a statistic. So my answer to this is, first of all, there's a lot more visibility about Lyme disease. And this visibility is in the mainstream media. We used to be considered Lyme loonies, but now we've got people like National Geographic and Canadian Geographic backing up what we've been saying for decades. Another thing in our favor is long COVID. And we have to be careful that we don't let Lyme disease just kind of get swept under the carpet as, kind of long COVID. But we do realize that there's a lot of crossover. So as we learn more about long COVID, a lot of the lessons can be applied to long Lyme disease. And we do have, at this point, an opportunity in Quebec where we have one of the best Lyme treating doctors in Canada working at a clinic. He's able to collect the data. And when he gets his data, we're going to be able to apply that across Canada. So we do finally have an opportunity to demonstrate that people who are treated with longer-term antibiotics really do get better. Another thing is that the techniques in molecular biology are just galloping forward. If I say PCR, we now have to say, well, yeah, but what kind of PCR are you doing? So now we're not constrained to looking for very specific things. We can look at all of the pathogens that are in any given person. Fourth really good thing is that we do have a number of really solid groups in Canada, and we're working with them. For example, we know the Magnata Foundation, they're doing a lot of really good work. And we also have excellent communication with groups in the US and in Europe. And that means that we're now getting a diversity of approaches. So instead of just relying on the Americans, we can have a diversity of viewpoints. So I can say that in the 15 years that I've been involved, we've never had so many independent indicators that things are actually getting better. So we finally arrived at a time, we're in a place, and we have a group of people who really can bring this forward.